Final Fantasy games used to be one and done. They didn't need sequels or spin-offs to complete their stories. In general, it was better that way. But money talks, and the phenomenal success of Final Fantasies 7 and 10 led Square to greenlight follow-ups to those beloved classics. Tacking on a sequel to a story that wasn't designed with one in mind is a risk. Introducing a new, greater threat can retroactively undercut the stakes of the original game, while character growth can be cancelled out when they embark upon new arcs. While it's certainly not impossible to successfully build on an existing narrative, it is a challenge to get it right. And I think it's fair to say that Final Fantasy hasn't always excelled with its sequels. If you insist on going back to the well, a prequel might be the smarter choice. Final Fantasy X, for example, is a masterpiece that didn't need anything added to it. And look, I kind of like Final Fantasy X too. It has a fun battle system and some wonderful music. But that was a story that didn't need to be told, and a game that didn't need to exist. On the other hand, a prequel documenting the pilgrimage of Braska, Auron, and Jecht sounds compelling. Although we know how their adventure ends, being there to witness the campfire conversations and minor conflicts of their journey, watching Jecht's growth as a man and as a father, could bring even greater emotional resonance to FF10. That's essentially what Crisis Core does for Final Fantasy VII. Its value doesn't come from the story it tells, because we know the major bullet points from the original. Zack was a first-class soldier. He had an ill-fated romance with Aerith. He was there at the Nibelheim incident, and he died trying to get back to Midgar with Cloud. This prequel's existence is justified by its portrayal of Zack, a guy who is crucial to FF7's plot, despite barely being present in it. Ideally, a prequel should enhance its predecessor by adding depth to the characters and world. While Crisis Core doesn't succeed with everything it tries, it takes someone who is hard to care about because we just didn't spend any time with him, and turns him into a beloved, iconic hero. Zack is different from other Final Fantasy protagonists. The best heroes don't merely defeat an external threat, they also conquer some aspect of themselves. Terra struggles with what it means to be an Esper in a world where magic has all but died out. Cloud is overcome by self-doubt and shame that he never achieved the goal he set for himself. While Squall's abandonment issues mean that he rejects any attempt at companionship. Zack, however, doesn't contend with the same inner strife. Sure, he has the occasional moment of doubt, but he's naturally confident, competent, and charismatic. Crisis Core has a decidedly cheesy tone. There's a lot of heavy-handed dialogue about heroes, monsters, hope, honor, and dreams. And that fits Zack perfectly. This goofy guy is not the most complex character, but he has a huge heart. His ultimate goal isn't to save the world. He just wants to save his friend and get back home to his girl. That's easy to root for. Zack's relationships are at the heart of Crisis Core, and one of the game's surprising strengths is how well it uses characters from FF7, Cloud and Aerith in particular. Zack takes on the role of supportive big bro to this young version of Cloud, who's meek but earnest, and it's wonderfully wholesome. It's clear how much he cares when he warns Cloud to stay away from the den of monsters that is Soldier. He doesn't want his friend to make the same mistakes he did, so he urges him to save himself before it's too late. Similarly, Zack's whirlwind romance with Aerith is a welcome reprieve from the game's weird plot. It's refreshing to take a break from fighting an army of clones, just to enjoy the simple pleasures of building a flower wagon. Aerith is a ray of sunshine, and her scenes with Zack are believable and beautifully sweet. None more so than her hugging him after a traumatic loss. Unfortunately, the antagonists lack that same personal touch. I appreciate the insight we get into Sephiroth's friendship with his fellow soldiers Genesis and Angeal. They're his only friends, and he refuses to pursue them even after they go rogue. There's an endearing sense of nostalgia when he reminisces about sneaking into the training room to test their skills against each other. However, there's not enough of this stuff to ground them as characters. Most of their scenes are plagued by stiff, overly dramatic dialogue. They're just not convincing human interactions. While Angeal has an important role as Zack's mentor, we don't get to know him well enough to ever form a truly meaningful bond. For better and for worse, Genesis is the one who stands out. He's a controversial figure among FF7 fans. But for me, the issue isn't the content of his story so much as how it's told. He's just kind of one note. Aside from an obsession with reciting poetry, he doesn't have any memorable character traits. It's a shame because there are some cool ideas at play here. Like so many others in FF7, he's a Shinra experiment. His body is degrading and he feels like a monster, so he abandons the company to search for a cure. We even get a brief glimpse into his childhood, when we discover a desk stacked with trophies that he won for his various science experiments. It's a small moment that makes things feel a tiny bit more personal. Given the caliber of the characterization in FF7 Remake, I'm reasonably confident they could do something cool with him if he does show up in that series. The one obvious misstep with Genesis is his appearance in the Nibelheim reactor scene. This is one of the most pivotal scenes in FF7, where we watch Sephiroth's last moments of lucidity before the madness overtakes him. Retconning in this poetry fanatic takes the spotlight away from Sephiroth without adding in anything new of value. Not a fan. Ultimately, thankfully, Crisis Core is not about Genesis. It's about Zack and the people who are important to him. Despite being a lifelong FF7 fan, I never played Crisis Core until the recent re-release. I did watch all the cutscenes on YouTube, and in particular, I watched the ending many times over. Even so, it surprised me how much more impactful it was after playing the game and seeing everything in context. Zack's fate isn't a mystery, so the ending isn't about the tension of what's going to happen next. It's about experiencing the final moments of this guy's life alongside him. There's this mechanic called the DMW, Digital Mind Wave, which mostly just buffs you in battle. But during the last stand, it's used to show the thoughts rushing through Zack's head as he fights for his life. Everyone who's been part of his journey is there. And when he's wounded, barely able to lift the Buster Sword, moments away from death, there's only one person he's thinking of: Aerith. This blend of gameplay and storytelling has an impact that only video games can create. The best thing a story can do is make you care about its characters. Zack's life and death are so beautifully depicted that wonky plot elements like Genesis's monologuing, the monsters with Angeal's face, and the bizarre hair-eating scene are just background noise. When I reflect on my time with this game, I'll remember the fun of hanging out with Zack and the pain of saying goodbye. Creating a follow-up to one of the greatest games ever is a monumental task. In some ways, Crisis Core improves FF7, and in others it undermines it. But making Zack a fully realized character that players can invest in brings a new layer to the story that absolutely enhances it. Generally, I don't want Final Fantasy games to have sequels or prequels, but there are always exceptions. Warts and all, Crisis Core represents a worthy addition to the canon of my all-time favorite video game.
Me? Gungaga.